And welcome back to American Agenda. I'm Heather Childers along with Bob Sellers. House Democrats are set to pass President Biden's nearly $2 trillion COVID relief bill tomorrow without Republican support. This comes as Democrats accept only 2 of the Republicans' 286 amendments to the bill. They only accepted 2 of them. Republicans are slamming the bill, saying only 9% of the money goes directly towards the pandemic and COVID relief, and that it funds unrelated social policy initiatives. Let's bring in our panel once again to discuss. Thanks to everyone for sticking around. Stacy, I don't know if you've had a chance to look through this, but only, approximately $1 trillion of this goes towards bailouts, pork, different policy changes, special interest groups. What stood out the most to you?
Well, I think what stood out the most to me, Heather, was the fact that Americans are getting short shrift. So as a conservative, I don't think it is the government's role to pay Americans or to provide direct stimulus to Americans in the form of checks. But in a year where we've seen American businesses shut down and people told you cannot work, not that they didn't have jobs, but people who literally employed other people were told you cannot work, then the government should do something to offset the damage that was done there. So we see multi-year spending where they're actually allocating money for years that that we're not in. So some of the spending is held over until 2022. Some of it's held over until 2024. They're doing things to make sure that they don't run out of cash. And the other thing, Heather, that really burns my shorts is we have another round of foreign aid in this package when we just gave foreign aid in the trillions in December. So I keep asking myself, what is it that we don't know about this foreign aid spending? What is it that these people, these countries, these warlords, some of them dictators, despots, tin-pot dictators, why do they deserve so much of our taxpayer dollars? And why are we borrowing money to send it to them yet again? It hasn't even been 90 days since we gave them an infusion of cash. Right. So there's a lot there, but that's just the highlights.
Yes, yeah. And Joe, who are we borrowing that money from? China? But that's true. In reference to the amount of money that is going overseas in this, what was originally supposed to be a COVID relief plan, which is now being called an American Rescue Plan, at least $750 million going to the global effort for the vaccine in 2024 and future pandemics, and that's on top of the $4 billion being promised to the WHO for the the COVAX vaccine program there.
Let me just start by saying what America's thinking. Nobody but nobody should be burning Stacy's shorts. Stop it.
That's true.
That's first and foremost.
I was thinking, ouch.
Listen. Exactly. So this is not a COVID relief bill. This is a big bunch of pork in a barrel. And I'm not really sure I understand, how civics work as well as I thought I did, because I thought that you could take a bill like this and do about 1 page, maybe 3 pages, and say, we're going to put a bunch of money toward making sure that communities can deal with this pandemic that was brought upon them by nothing that they did, not of their own volition. This was released by China, either by accident or on purpose, and we're dealing with it now. Let's not do any pork for Nancy Pelosi in San Francisco. Let's not rebuild Minneapolis where they allowed the city to burn. Let's not do all this stuff that we have to wait 2, 3, 4, 5 years for. Let's do COVID-19 stuff, period. If you want, send me the bill, and I will X out everything that says anything other than COVID-19 relief, and then we can do this thing the right way. The fact that they're bullies in the House of Representatives right now, and they've got a very slim majority, and they're going to push this through, makes me ill, because your question was so perfect. We're going to borrow money from China to pay for relief that was caused by China, and then it turns out most of that relief has nothing to do with what happened from China. Yeah. It's nuts to me.
It's absolutely nuts. Let's take a look at some of the pork in the bill that we were mentioning. $350 billion for state and local governments, more for governments that screwed up the first time around, by the way, and kept everything closed, like New York and California versus states that opened. $86 billion for pension plans, $129 billion for schools, whether or not they reopen. The majority of that money going in the years to come, not for this year either, by the way. $15 billion for Medicaid match, $30 billion for public transit, $500 million for arts, humanities, libraries, and museums, and then also reports of $100 million going to fund the Bay Area Rapid rapid transit in Silicon Valley. And then I would add to that, Jenny Beth, $1.5 million for a bridge to Canada. That is one of Chuck Schumer's specific projects that he is big on.
The minority whip, Steve Scalise, has called this the Payout to Progressives Act, and that is exactly what this is. You just went through and listed all of these things that they are doing. They are going to spend $170 billion to give to states and $130 billion to give to local governments to bail them out from financial problems that they had before COVID even hit our shores. Then they're talking about 120 to 170 billion more for schools. That's on top of $82 billion that was just enacted in December for schools. And by the way, that $82 billion, they haven't even spent all of that yet. This is just to pay off the people who helped get Pelosi and others who Pelosi likes elected. And that's exactly what it is. It's stealing money from our children. It's not borrowing. We're kidding ourselves if we call this borrowing. We haven't asked them if it's okay. They couldn't even consent if they wanted to because they're not adults. And they're going to be straddled with this debt.
But Bob, you know, and passing it regardless, and no support from Republicans.
Well, the Democrats ran on, we're going to give you $2,000. And so that's what they want to happen. If that didn't happen politically, it would backfire on them. But then they put all this pork in there, and Republicans need to get in touch with their voters, their people, and let them know how much pork is in this, because when they oppose this, and they will, they have to be careful politically. They have to make sure they explain why they're voting against a bill that's going to send a bunch of people money. And so that's the risk for them. So I feel like everybody needs to understand what's in here. As you were saying, what's the percentage that's COVID related?
Only 9% is directly associated with COVID relief.
There you go.
9%.
There you go.
So all these folks that think that they're getting money, they're not going to be getting that money. A lot of other folks are. All right, we're going to have another topic that we're going to hit on after this break.